Well, let's now talk to Dr. Frank Leon Roberts. He is in New York City, and he is the nation's first professor to teach a Black Lives Matter seminar at New York University. He's also the founder of blacklivesmattersyllabus.com. Dr. Roberts, last hour we spoke about how this time round it feels different, right? And George Floyd spent the last few weeks of his life recovering from coronavirus. We've been talking about this pandemic, and it really has absolutely laid bare the inequalities in the US. And I just want to go back to some CDC figures. African Americans make up 13% of the population, but 30% of cases. What impact has this pandemic had in spurring this movement that we're seeing now?
Well, I think, as I said in the first hour, I think that it has only helped to ignite the flame and exacerbate these feelings of social unrest. So when you have a group of people, meaning particularly the U.S. Black community, that is already used to this epidemic of police violence, and then on top of that, you put an epidemic of public health, the coronavirus, and then on top of that, you put new unemployment numbers that are disproportionately affecting the communities. There's only but so much that one community can bear. And so it's certainly fueling this sense of unrest that we see all throughout the country.
Dr. Roberts, George Floyd, I recall, was a talented footballer, right? But he didn't end up managing to finish his sports scholarship. So there may be opportunities, which are albeit already few and far between, but there are clearly other life pressures too. And others are struggling with the same difficulties. He went back to a place rife with poverty, gangs, drug issues. How does racial inequality, how is that addressed within the context of these broad socioeconomic challenges?
I'm sorry, your question is how do you address
racial inequality in the United States when there are these broad socioeconomic challenges, where people are going back to areas where they're having to deal with a whole range of other obstacles? How do we bring people closer together when there are so many other divisions keeping them apart?
Right. Well, what we need is a broad political agenda that works for everyone as opposed to a chosen few. And that's been far and few in between in the United States. What we also have, part of the problem in the U.S., is we have a bipartisan disregard for poor people. So much of the political conversation in Washington, both among Democrats and Republicans, is about the middle class. But the reality is a disproportionate number of Black people are in that lower income group, the lower class, and there is no robust policy conversation happening on either the left or the right, or the Democrats or the Republicans, that addresses the particularities of that experience, of what it means to not only be Black, but also be poor in America. And so what we need to do is kind of shift our conversation, understanding that when we help those communities that are on the ground, who have boots on their neck, metaphorically speaking, we help everyone. When we help the George Taylors and the Breonna Taylors of the world addressing the social conditions that they're living in, everyone who's above them on the social hierarchy benefits. And so unless and until politicians begin to understand that when you help Black communities, you help everyone else, the situation is unlikely to change.
That was Dr. Frank Leon Roberts, the founder of